Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Get Outdoors with Don and Dora. And today I'm going to be talking about kind of what I do to get ready for a long trip with the Jeep. We do a fair amount of off-roading and some trips shorter than others. This one's going to be kind of a long one. We're going to be driving all the way up to Colorado from Phoenix. So that's quite a few miles, and we're going to be going into elevations exceeding 12,000 feet, maybe 13,000 feet. So last thing you want to do is get stuck in a situation like that. You really don't want to get stuck anywhere when you're camping or you're out in the middle of nowhere. But this is a situation where you definitely want to make sure that you're prepared. So I want to touch on a few things on what I do to prepare for a trip like that. Basically what I do with my vehicle, how I inspect it, what I look for, just to touch on a few things so that when you go out and you're on a trip that you're not caught with your pants down, so to speak, and you're prepared and you've done at least a little bit of homework to check on a few things before you actually leave the driveway, because that's where a lot of things could be fixed at that point. It's the most convenient place is at home when you got a O'Reilly's or a Pep Boys or an AutoZone close by where you can pick up a part or two, or get some antifreeze, or get a few quarts of oil, or a quart of gear oil. It's so much easier to do when you're at home and you can fix these problems in your driveway, or at least, get a handle on it before you take off. So we're going to touch on a few things, and hope you enjoy this video. Okay, so first item on the list that I check for before going on a big trip is the coolant. Coolant's pretty easy to access. It's one of the first things you see when you open up the hood, and the coolant jug should be filled up to that max line. Now mine is low and it's not filled up to the max line. That's only because I had a AC tube burst. One of my hose clamps for my transmission cooler line rubbed against the one of the main lines that carries the refrigerator into the AC system, wore a hole in it. So part of the procedure to get that out and replace it, the radiator had to come out, so they had to drain all my coolant and stuff. So there might not be quite as much in there, should be now, but the radiator's full. I've checked that. So you can pull off the radiator cap right over here, and this may be full. This isn't necessarily the best way to tell how much coolant you have, although if you're showing it significantly low once it's been full, that's kind of a telltale sign that you're losing coolant somewhere. But if you wait till this cools off, and obviously you don't want to open it when it's hot, it says do not open hot. As long as it's full all the way up in here into your radiator, you're probably good for a while. But I would definitely stop and get some antifreeze. So make sure your antifreeze is topped off. That's number one. Number two on the list is check your oil. Always make sure that you pull the dipstick, and here on my 2009 Wrangler, my engine oil dipstick is right here, and you can very easily pull that out. This has been sitting here for a while, so it should give us a pretty good idea how much oil that I have in the crankcase. So let me get it up here. It's up there quite a ways. I would wipe it off, and probably where the cross hatches there, that's where you want to be. You want to be sitting right in the middle of those two lines with the cross hatches. So that'll tell you whether you're full or not. That's item number two that you want to check. And I kind of let people do their own thing. If they want to change their oil whenever they feel fit, some people do it every 3,000 miles. Some people do it every 4,000 or 5,000 miles. I do mine every 4,000 miles. With a synthetic oil these days, every 3,000 is kind of wasting, I think, the oil. You can probably get away with probably as much as 5,000 or more these days. So that was number 2 on the list. Number 3 is your transmission fluid. Here's your transmission dipstick. Now, a lot of vehicles these days don't come with a transmission dipstick, so you're gonna have to just trust that it's gonna be okay. I think most trucks you could probably access the transmission fluid or has a dipstick on it, but mine does, and I just had some work on my transmission done here a little over a year ago, and seems to be running and shifting just fine. Now don't have any real issues, but that fluid, when you pull your dipstick out, should be red in color. If you have a dipstick and you check it and it looks kind of brown, it's probably burnt, and you're going to be making a trip to the transmission shop. There's the line right there, the dipstick. You pull a hold of that ring and a big long rod comes out of there, and it's going to tell you how much fluid you have. Next on the list is number 4. Check your battery. If your battery's acting kind of funny, maybe kind of slow starting, or seems to hesitate and not want to start up right away, it could be maybe a oxygen sensor or something like that. Could be bad, but really good chance it's probably your battery. And it doesn't take much to have your battery test. You can go to AutoZone, you can go to O'Reilly's, you can go to Pep Boys, you can go to Advanced Auto Parts. Most all those shops will test your battery for free. They get a little machine they hook up to the terminals, and they can do a test on there, and they put it under a load, and if it drops below a certain voltage, you know your battery's bad. And they're not going to lie to you and try to sell you something that you don't need. I've never run into that, but and I would like to also do a YouTube video on a review on this particular battery. It's the X2 Power battery. I got this at Batteries Plus. It's a very good battery, very high quality. I will do a review on that battery coming up soon, so look for that. But let's move on and to the next item. What I would also do next on the list would be check your differential fluid. On this, I've got the aftermarket Yukon differential cover, and that lower plug you see on the bottom, that one is the drain plug. The second one up is here, the bottom one is the fill plug. You pull that out and you fill only up to there. I'm not sure exactly why they have that top plug in there. I don't see why you would want to fill it with that plug anyway, because if that plug-in is in there, the bottom one, you're not going to know how full you are, but you do not want to fill past that level. So what you'll do is you take that cap off. That's an Allen wrench or socket on there, and you dip your finger in that hole, and you'll be able to tell whether it's got enough gear oil, and it'll even drip out. So as long as you've got fluid dripping out of that, once you pull that out, chances are you've got plenty of diff fluid in there. See, the next item on the list that I check is I just look underneath my vehicle for any kind of leaks, and I'll show you that here in a second. I got to get a piece of cardboard and I will show you underneath the vehicle. Okay, here we are underneath my Jeep, and what you want to look for is any kind of leaks. Here's the gas tank. It's got a plate that guards the gas tank from any punctures. So that's really not an issue for me. I've got a cross member here, but this is the diff, or the transfer case. Want to look for any leaking fluid there. Notice that anything loose. Check your drive shafts for any movement that's not supposed to be there. If you look right here, and I had just got this fixed the other week, my seal on the rear differential, right here on the drive shaft, that seal was seeping lube out of it. All I did was I had put on those Yukon diff covers, and I replaced the gear oil with synthetic gear oil, and apparently the viscosity of that synthetic kind of pushed through that differential seal there. This is the pinion gear goes into a ring gear. The ring gear spins inside there, and the pinion rides on that gear, or drives that ring gear. And so you can see where there's oil that had splashed up right there. And I had some very minor little drips here on the driveway. But since we're going on a trip, I did not want that to continue, and I didn't want to have to worry about losing gear oil on the trip. So I got that addressed very quickly. You want to check your hubs, your axle seals. You've got a seal in that wheel. You got a seal on the other side. Same thing. If you see anything kind of dripping down on the back of the brake shield there, you want to get that fixed. Last thing you want to be is going down some off-road trail and it's a steep hill and you need to ride the brakes a little bit and have that go out on you. That would be a scary, scary moment to be going down a trail and then all of a sudden not have brakes. So you want to check for anything that's out of the ordinary, any brake line damage, anything that might be a fluid leak of any kind. And then we're going to go around here to the other side. We're just looking at the exhaust. Look for any exhaust leaks of any kind. See if you've got any leaks up towards the front there. That pinion looks good. I don't see any leaks around it. I don't see anything that looks like I've got a leak in the front. I don't see anything up there. I can get a little closer here. Let me stop the video and we'll move up front. Okay, so here we are up front, and what you're looking for here is you're looking for maybe a crack in one of your axle U-joints back down in there. Look at your brake lines. There's your wheel sensor. If you have a leak in one of your brake lines, you're going to notice any dripping or wet down here. Same thing on the other side. You want to look at your diff. You want to see if there's any lubricant leaking out of there. Check your tie rod end, see if anything's loose there. Maybe check your steering box. You've got your pitman arm up there. Have somebody get in the Jeep, turn the steering wheel back and forth. Notice if anything looks loose or kind of shimmies a little bit when you crank the steering wheel back and forth a little. Just kind of rock it back and forth. Check the lower radiator hose. Make sure that there's no leaks there. There's where it attaches to the water pump. And there's your fan belt or your serpentine belt with the Jeep. Make sure that's tight. Look for any splits or cracks in that. Just little things that you can do to make your trip a little safer. It's kind of gives you a little peace of mind that you've checked over stuff and you're not just going into a trip. This Jeep has 123,000 miles on it. So that's when things start to go bad. You start to notice things crack, lines break. I had to have the radiator in this thing replaced a little while back. It cracked around the upper radiator hose. There is an epoxy that they use. It's basically like a composite plastic now that they have, and it was split right under here. So basically your outside side tanks are plastic, and then the center is actually still aluminum finned, just like a normal radiator, but it's all epoxy together. So anyways, check your brake fluid, pull your cap off, make sure it's up to a decent level. Don't want to be any higher than this line. You don't want to overfill that. You also don't want to overfill your oil in your vehicle, so it helps maybe to do an oil change before you leave, and if you don't do it yourself, maybe take it to a shop that knows what they're doing, because if you overflow your Jeep with too much oil, say it's 5.5 quarts, you're gonna, if you put an extra half a quart in there, you're gonna run into problems. What that'll do eventually is it'll spill oil back over into the breather. It'll run through and burn through the motor and burn up, just like as if your valve guides were bad and you're losing oil and burning some oil. What that'll do is that'll kill your catalytic converters prematurely, even gum up your oxygen sensor, and then you'll have a whole nother set of problems. So probably one of the last things on the checklist is make sure your tires were maybe recently rotated. Last thing you want to do is just continue to run a set of mud terrains on the same wheels. I tend to rotate mine every 5,000 miles or something like that, usually after every oil change, because what'll happen is that tread will cup. It'll start wearing funny. It'll wear on the back side more on the front side, and then you'll end up with this funny ride. It'll ride really bad, really rough. I did that with a truck that I had. I wasn't quite familiar with mud terrain tires years ago, and I didn't really bother to rotate them, and I kind of ruined those tires early just because I never did that. And so these are so expensive, I just wanted to make sure that they were done when they're supposed to, because you'd just be going through tires left and right. So rotate your tires, check your lug nuts. I've got caps on here right now so you can't see the lugs, but make sure your lugs are all torqued down properly. Check your shocks. Make sure that they're in there solid, that everything's been tightened properly. I installed these Fox shocks here not too long ago. They've been on here for a few months, and boy, could I tell the difference in the ride. After I had put them on, I didn't realize I had old Bilsteins on there. And Bilsteins are pretty good shocks, and they lasted for quite a while, but they were on there for probably about 115,000, 120,000 miles of the 123,000 that's on the odometer now. And you just don't realize how shitty the ride's getting until you put on a new set of shocks and you realize how much smoother it is. But you pull out of the driveway, you get this little, I've got like a little dip here at the end of my driveway. And so when I drop onto that, it's kind of a nice cushy dip right off there when I back out or when I go across a dip in the road at any kind of speed. It just is like butter compared to what it used to be like. So check your spare, make sure you got, decent amount of air in there. You don't want that to be low, especially if you need it. Also, I carry a tire repair kit. with little rubber cement plugs. You've got these little rubber plugs that I have a Smitty built bag here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So in here I keep a tire repair kit. I'll go in here and there's my repair kit. It's got all the tire plugs that you need. It's even got some little patches in there. This thing's awesome. So if you ever get a nail in your tire and you're losing air a little quicker than you should, just let it run all the way down to flat tire, and then use one of these bad boys. Shove a plug in there. It'll be all fixed up in about 15-20 minutes. Let it cure for a little bit, and it'll put some air to it, and you're ready to go. So anyway, other than that, that's pretty much my checklist for what I look for and what I do before I go on an off-road trip. Like I said, you don't want to be stuck in the middle of nowhere, and you don't want to have any issues. You want to be able to enjoy your trip. You want to go home happy and not have a big bill to pay, or go to spend your trip at a repair shop worried about when you're going to be able to enjoy the rest of your trip, because you're going to spend maybe half a day or an entire day at a repair shop. So if you like what you see, hit subscribe, and also hit like, and hope you see you out in the great outdoors. Have a good day, folks.